After that night, the Carters became prisoners in their own house. During the days, they pretended to live a normal life. James worked from home, trying to write articles. Linda read books, pretending they were interesting. Emily and Ryan played in the yard, but always they were aware of the clock. They watched the hands inch closer to 2 a.m., each tick echoing their fear. But the nights were torture. The phone would ring, sometimes softly, sometimes so loudly it shook the windows, and each call brought with it an icy draft that chilled you to the bone. One night the phone rang and then stopped. James, unable to take it anymore, went to check it. There was no one on the line. But when he hung up the receiver, he noticed something odd. It wasn't the normal click, it was like a gurgling sound. He rushed back to his computer and dialed 911, but all he heard was that same awful gurgling. The operator said they could hear nothing. "You sure you aren't having trouble with your phone line?" James asked. "No, sir. Everything checks out fine." That same night, the phone rang again, and this time James let it go to voicemail. What he heard on the other end made his blood run cold. It was a voice, a raspy whisper, and it was saying, "Goodbye." He knew then that whatever was on the other end of the line, it was preparing to cross over. But how? How does a phone connect the living to the dead? What followed was hell. The calls continued, night after night. The whisper grew stronger, more frequent. Once it even stayed on the line, whispering constantly until dawn. James began to lose weight. He couldn't sleep, eat, or concentrate. The phone was draining him. Then one morning Ryan came downstairs holding a book. "I found this under my bed," he said, handing it to his dad. James opened it. It was filled with strange symbols, odd diagrams, and in the middle, scrawled in faded ink, was a name, Johnson. James stared at it, his heart sinking. He knew that name. It was the same Johnson who had died in this house, the owner before them. James searched the book, desperate to find something that could help him understand what was happening. He found pages detailing rituals, incantations, and one phrase that sent shivers down his spine. "The line is the tether. Through it comes the other." Now he understood. The phone wasn't just a messenger, it was a bridge. And whatever was on the other side wanted to cross over. He showed the book to Linda, who, after reading it, nodded grimly. "This house, this phone, it's a portal, and whatever's using it isn't friendly." Her voice shook. She agreed they had to do something. James contacted the local historical society, hoping to find records about the Johnsons. He needed to know what had happened all those years ago, why that phone was so important. He found an old newspaper clipping about the Johnson family. They had been ordinary people, a husband and wife in their early 60s. Their son Thomas had gone missing at sea. The article said it was an accident, but the tone implied something more sinister. A crime. James thought back to the phone calls. Did it want to tell him something about its son? Was that why it had waited 30 years to reach out? But why? Why now? James and Linda decided to visit the local cemetery. They wanted to pay their respects to the Johnsons, to ask them directly for help. As they walked among the headstones, they found the Johnson plot. The grave of Thomas caught their attention. Unlike his parents', it was relatively new. Beside it, a simple stone marked the spot where their son had been laid to rest. James took a deep breath, his eyes closed. Whatever is in this house, whatever is tied to this phone, it needs to be set free. Suddenly, the ground rumbled, the nearby headstones rocked. James and Linda looked at each other, terror in their eyes. Whatever was using the Johnsons' phone was stirring. Out of breath, James scrambled up the ladder, relief flooding him as he reached the attic door. Inside, however, the sight that awaited him was horrifying. Ryan stood in front of the window looking out at the storm. Beside him, the phone lay on the floor, its cord ripped from the wall. "Ryan, what are you doing here?" James asked. "I saw something," Ryan whispered, his voice shaking. "Something in the closet. I thought we should get away." James felt his blood turn to ice. Why did his son see things? Was this phone affecting his mind? Before he could ask more questions, the wind suddenly slammed the attic door shut. Locked. James raced to the door, pounding it frantically. "Ryan, open this door," he yelled. But there was no reply. The wind howled, rain poured through the cracks, and James felt despair creep into his heart. He was trapped in the attic with his son. Whatever was using the phone was loose. Now he understood why the book spoke of binding the line, of keeping the tether strong. If it broke, the barrier would crumble. His son wouldn't just see things, he'd become part of them. Panic rising, James searched for another way out, but the attic was a dead end. He could see the dark silhouette of his son framed against the window. Ryan was calling out to him, "Dad, I'm scared." James raced to him, but as he reached out to touch his son, Ryan vanished. The air shimmered around him. The closet door creaked open. James peered inside. It was pitch black. He called out to Ryan, his voice cracking, "Son, where are you?" Then he heard it, a soft whisper, right beside him. "He's coming." James whipped around. Standing in the shadows, a figure materialized, tall, gaunt, with skin like stretched canvas. Its eyes burned with an unnatural light. Who are you?" James stammered. The figure didn't reply. It gestured toward the closet. With trembling hands, James opened it. The closet was empty. He looked back at the figure, then at the phone lying discarded on the floor. Suddenly it clicked. This wasn't a ghost. It was its son. Whatever had taken Ryan hadn't meant to be seen. It had come for him, but in doing so it revealed itself. But why, and what did it want? Now understanding dawned on James. He recognized the urgency in the creature's movements, the wild glint in its eyes. It was scared, it was in pain, and it was trying to send him a message. James bent down, picked up the phone and dialed 911. He explained everything. The phone calls, the book, what he had seen. The operator, clearly skeptical, promised to send help, but James knew they wouldn't arrive in time. He listened to the phone, feeling the vibrations against his ear. The creature shifted, making a noise like tearing cloth. James closed his eyes, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't mean to hurt you." The creature shook, then vanished. Seconds later, sirens wailed in the distance. As the police and paramedics ran into the house, James stood paralyzed, staring at the phone. The line was dead. Ryan was gone. But as the sun rose and the first rays of light touched the phone, it clicked. Something had returned. James fell to his knees, overwhelmed with grief and understanding. He finally understood what the creature was trying to say. It wasn't malevolent. It was lost. It wasn't evil. It wasn't pain. It had used the phone, not to escape, but to seek help. It had tried to warn them, but they hadn't listened. Now it was too late. Ryan was gone. But James knew he had a choice. Give in to his despair or honor his son's memory. He chose the latter. After the police left, James went back to the closet. He found the book lying open. Slowly he began to read, learning the incantation by heart. Then he went to the phone. It was cold, lifeless, but James felt something stir inside him, something powerful, something like hope. He pressed the receiver to his ear. The line was dead, but he didn't care. He knew where Ryan was, and James promised his son he would bring him home. The phone fell from his hand. James was ready to fight. He would cross over, he would find his son, and together they would break the tether, ending this nightmare for good.